President, the term European solidarity has been bandied around this morning as if it were a given. Well, I want to call that into question. We cannot sign a blank cheque to bail out the countries of Eastern Europe. We do not have the money. Economically, the plan is quite unsound, but most important of all, it is politically unacceptable to the taxpayers in France and Britain and Germany that we should do so. And yet the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, Alistair Darling, seems now to be an advocate of this plan. I think he has lost his marbles. He says that this is the time for Europe to build on shared values of cooperation, as if we are one big happy family. Well, the Hungarian Prime Minister, Mr Gyurcsany, rather blows that idea of European solidarity apart. He demands that the European Union bails out countries such as his to the tune of €180 billion. And he says that if we do not do that, then he promises us that 5 million unemployed migrants will head west into our countries. That, ladies and gentlemen, is nothing other than blackmail, and it shows the folly of having allowed countries like Hungary into this political union, and it highlights even more deeply the folly of having open borders. The only response I really hear there today is that somehow we have to have more European Union, that more power will work. Well, look, you were sent a message by the voters in France, by the voters in the Netherlands and by the voters in Ireland. You do not have the legitimacy to take more power from the European Union. This economic crisis, I believe, will be what voters will vote on in the European elections this year, and I hope this time they send you people a message that is so big and so loud that for once you simply will not be able to ignore it. Thank you.
Nigel Farage, we might not always be happy in our European family, but you belong to the family as well. So,
of course, we all know that the community budget, at less than 1% of GDP, can only make a limited contribution to a European Union-wide stimulus. The money has to come essentially from national budgets.
It is curious that whatever the crisis, the answer in this House always seems to be greater European integration. Most people beset by the economic squalls that we have had in the past 6 months respond by seeing it as scary, possibly painful. But here in this House, of course, we see it as an opportunity for more regulation, more unification, more harmonisation at EU level, as this report shows. Of course, the problem with this is that the people making that decision will be shielded from the consequences of it. Living in their palaces and chancelleries, surrounded and cocooned in their motorised convoys and their chauffeured cars and their official banquets, they will not be paying the price that our constituents will as a result of these economic policies. It seems to me axiomatic that we should be responding to the economic crisis with more flexibility, with allowing countries to tailor their interest rates to suit their own needs. Instead, we are doing precisely the opposite. Mr President, and so the European Union carries on acquiring one by one the attributes and trappings of nationality: a legal system, common external borders, and now a common policy on who is allowed to cross those borders and settle within its territory. One by one, it has taken on all of the characteristics that international law recognises as definitive of statehood. I wanted to compliment you, Mr President, on your ruling that it was acceptable for MEPs to demonstrate, as my neighbour did, little Tibetan flags on their desks. It stands in marked contrast to the way we had our placards snatched off us when we dared to display the word referendum in this chamber. But I would like to ask you, because I know you are interested in this subject, and other members of this House, to ponder the hypocrisy of being in favour of national self-determination in Tibet but against national self-determination within the European Union. And if you think I am being extreme by drawing a parallel between an authoritarian state in China and the European Union, prove me wrong by putting your treaty to the people in the referendums that you promised. Pactio Olisipiensis Sensendai.
thank you.
I am rather concerned, to be open to you, about the state of play in Council, where we are not making the progress I would wish to see.